right, Shalom. I want to start off as always by giving our praises and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rucha HaKodash. Daban is unto the apostles, the elders, and the bishops of Great Millstone. I want to send much love unto the brothers out there doing this work in truth and sincerity. And I also want to send peace and blessings unto the believers of the hopeful elect. And as you can see, the title of this lesson is going to be The Three Major Wars of Alexander the Great. And this is going to be a history video to touch on some information concerning the battles between the Greek Empire during the time of Alexander the Great and the Achaemenid Empire, or the Medo-Persian Empire, when Darius III was a king, okay, over that empire. And I wanted to highlight the three major wars that took place between them and show you the final battle that took place to ultimately stomp out the Persian dominion, and how Alexander pretty much took over their land, okay? And so without further ado, I want to start with the scripture here in the book of 1 Maccabees chapter 1, here in the Apocrypha, okay, which is a part of the Bible, by the way. I know you got Christians out there who say that the Apocrypha is not canon. Mainly it's Edomite Christians who say that, who are unlearned and who are just completely retarded. These people don't know history. They don't know scripture. And my question to them is always this: if the Apocrypha is not canon, is not, divinely inspired, then why did the Lord himself, whom you call Christ, keep Hanukkah? If it's false and it's fake, then why did the Lord himself keep Hanukkah and acknowledged it as a holiday amongst the Israelites? Because the account of Hanukkah is in the Apocrypha, is in the book of Maccabees, right? But I want to, continue down that road. But anyway, let's start here in 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 1, which mentioned Alexander the Great, all right? So starting here, 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 1, it says, "And it happened that Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece." So Alexander the Great, right, he defeated Darius III, king of the Persians and the Medes. And Alexander the Great was the first king over the Greek Empire, okay? Because before that, they didn't have, one king over the Greek city-states and just, Greece itself. But Alexander became that, okay? And then after him, you had many who tried to fulfill his lot of being king over the empire, but there's a bunch of chaos and wars and whatnot, and the scripture speaks about that, okay? But Alexander was the first king over Greece, okay? And it says, "And made many wars, and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth, and went through to the ends of the earth, and took spoils of many nations, and so much that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up." So he was full of pride, man, at the success that he had, okay? He never lost a battle. And to do what he did at that time seemed crazy, seemed impossible, right? But guess what? The Most High was with Alexander to fulfill scripture, okay? It was time for the Medo-Persian Empire to fall. And Alexander was the guy, okay, who was set up to fulfill that task, okay? And he just so happened to be an Edomite. And Esau, they praise Alexander, all right? They love Alexander the Great, okay? I mean, they go crazy about some Alexander, right? But anyway, Alexander was very successful at war, okay? And he never lost a battle, man. It says, and he gathered a mighty strong host and ruled over countries and nations and kings who became tributaries unto him. So Alexander the Great, he was a mighty king. He was a young man when he did all this, man. Okay, about 20 years old. When he took down the Medo-Persian Empire. As a young man, bro, 20? Bro, the Lord was with him. Okay? And so now I want to get into Daniel, because Daniel prophesied about the Greeks overtaking the Medo-Persian Empire. Okay? And let me see here. I get to the point here. This is Daniel chapter 8 in the 5th verse, okay? It says, and as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth and touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. This he-goat is talking about the Greek Empire, okay? The Greeks, who were Edomites, okay, that were portraying like they were, the sons of Japhet, but they wasn't actual sons of Japhet, okay? They were Edomites, all right? But he's seeing this vision of this goat coming from the west. Why? Because if you look at a map, okay, Greece was west of the Medo-Persian Empire, right? They were farther east, okay? But Greece, over in what we call Europe today, right? Turkey, that region, right? So he saw this he-goat coming from the west, and then he said he had a notable horn between his eyes. This notable horn is talking about Alexander the Great. Okay, he's that notable horn, right? It says, and he came to the ram, which the ram is talking about the Medo-Persian Empire that had two horns. Okay, one of the horns was the Medes, the other horn was the Persians. All right, and we know through prophecy that the Persians became more notable than the Medes. Why? Because of Cyrus the Great. Okay? They became greater than the Medes. And they became one empire, so to speak, the Medes and the Persians. So that's what the ram represent here in this vision. It says, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. So this he-goat was, he wasn't playing around with the ram. He came to the ram to destroy him. Okay? It says, and I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, meaning he was pissed. Okay? That he-goat was pissed because the Greeks didn't like the Persians, man. The Persian Empire, okay, the Medo-Persian Empire, they were putting hell on the Greeks, okay? And so when Alexander, was going to war with these people, they were pissed off because they was being oppressed by them, right? They was being slaughtered by the Medes and the Persians. And so this he-goat came and he was pissed off, man, against the ram. It says, and smote the ram and break his two horns, which were the Medes and the Persians. They got defeated, okay, by Alexander the Great. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. And ultimately, that was because of prophecy. It was time for the Medes and the Persians to fall. It says, therefore, the he-goat waxed very great. Why is that? Because they took over all the land, all the wealth, all the resources of the Medes and the Persians. Okay? If you go to Google here, the Medo-Persian Empire map, right? So you look at this landmass of how much these people controlled. Okay? Just a quick, little zoom in here on a picture. If I can get a good zoom in. No? Okay, I can. So, what did I just do? I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, but this is a good picture, of the Medes and the Persians, man. This is how much land they controlled. Okay. At their peak, I believe, during the time of Xerxes, it says they said Xerxes reigned over 127 provinces, right? That's a lot of land. Okay, America has 50 provinces, right? So he had 2 Americas, worth of land and some. But Xerxes, it said he reigned over 127 provinces, bro. That's a lot. So they waxed very great when they took these people down. Okay. So it says, therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up 4 notable ones towards the 4 winds of heaven. Right, the great horn, Alexander, he died. Okay, at like 32, they say. That Alexander died at like 32 years old. Okay, and then it says, oh, you know what? And Maccabees, it speaks about that, right? So you read verse 4 again. It says, and he gathered a mighty strong host and ruled over countries and nations and kings who became tributaries unto him. And after these things he fell sick and perceived that he should die. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable, and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died. And his servants bare rule every one in his place. So this is what Daniel is going into, right? The great horn was broken. Alexander died. Okay? It says, and for it came up 4 notable ones towards the 4 winds of heaven. That's speaking about his 4 generals. Okay? Now, before I get into his 4 generals, I wanted to show the 3 major battles or the 3 major wars of Alexander the Great against the Medo-Persian Empire. So this is an AI overview, all right? And as you can see here, it says Alexander the Great's 3 most pivotal wars campaigns involving crushing the Persian Empire, Granicus, Issus, and Gaugamela, conquering Egypt and invading India, culminating in vast territorial gains and the spread of Hellenistic culture across Asia, marketed by key battles against Darius III and King Porus. So as you can see here, it says, here are the 3 major phases conflicts. The conquest of Persia, 334-331 BCE. This campaign broke the Achaemenid Persian Empire. It says Battle of Granicus, 334 BCE. Alexander's first major victory in Asia Minor, opening the path to the rest of the region. Battle of Issus, 333 BCE, a decisive win against Darius III, securing Syria and paving the way for Egypt. Battle of Gaugamela, 331 BCE, the final crushing defeat of Darius III, effectively ending the Persian Empire and giving Alexander control of its heartlands. So these are the three major battles that took place between Alexander the Great and the Persian Empire, and he ultimately gained control after that. Now he had more wars, okay, but these are the major ones in which Darius III was defeated directly, okay, and they ultimately, killed him, right? Now I want to go into his as it says here in Daniel, it says what is it, 8 and 8? And for it came up four notable ones toward the four winds of heaven. Speaking about his generals, right? Now, these four generals are the one who came out on top after all the wars of the diadochi, okay? So it says, Alexander the Great four generals, Alexander the Great four main generals, known as diadochi, were Ptolemy, Seleucus, Cassander, and Lysimachus, who divided his vast empire after his death into separate Hellenistic kingdoms, leading to decades of conflict and the eventual establishment of dynasties like the Ptolemaic in Egypt and the Seleucid in the East. So these four generals ultimately, after all the conflicts and the warfare, they came out on top, all right? Because there were other generals, okay, who had power and, land before some of these guys. But ultimately they were killed off, and these four came out on top, okay? But Alexander had a bunch of generals with him, a bunch of them, right? So it says Ptolemy first Soter took control of Egypt, establishing the Ptolemaic kingdom with Alexandria as a major cultural hub, blending Greek and Egyptian culture. Seleucid gained control of Mesopotamia and the East, founding the Seleucid Empire, a vast territory stretched from Asia Minor to India. Cassander became ruler of Macedonia and Greece, establishing the Antipatrite dynasty. Excuse me if I'm butchering that word. Lysimachus ruled thrice in parts of Asia Minor, known for his military skills. These generals fought numerous wars, the wars of the diadochi, to consolidate their power, eventually carving out distinct kingdoms from Alexander's unified empire, which ultimately became the foundations of the Hellenistic world. Now, if you don't know about the wars of the diadochi, it was 6 major wars that had took place. I highly suggest you go and you study these wars, man. It gives you an insight to what was going on during the time when Alexander died, and all of his generals, who rose up, and they pretty much fought for the territory that they have. Okay, now one of his generals in particular, okay, was what is it? Yeah, this guy right here, Antigonus. Okay, if you don't know about Antigonus, this guy, all right, he was a major figure, a major figure during the war, the wars of the diadochi, man. This guy right here, bro, he almost gained Alexander Empire. Okay, he almost defeated, a lot of people and gained Alexander's empire, bro. But guess what? These, those are generals pretty much ganged up against this guy, Antigonus, man, to stop him. Okay, And that's how they got their lands and all that stuff. But he was going crazy, bro. This dude right here, Antigonus, bro. He was going crazy. He was whooping everybody's ass, okay? He was like an older guy, like in his 60s, bro, I believe. But he was slaughtering everybody, bro. And he was gaining all the land that Alexander conquered until they stopped him and they killed them, bro. So these wars are very important to go over, man. A lot of information, but you can just highlight the main points of these battles. But there's some very good stuff in this, man. Some very good history, you know. But I just want to highlight that, you know, just the 3 major battles that Alexander fought in. You can go more into it if you want to, but I'll stop right there. I pray it was edifying. All praise Yahweh, Ba'ashem Al-Shai, Ba'ashem Al-Kodash. Shalom.